Welcome to my tutorial for Double Dragon Revive, and this is for the extra mode. So this is for basically the mission mode, which is an optional mode with some challenges that are much harder than anything in the single player campaign, including the hard mode, which I completed hard mode first. I did normal and hard in the regular campaign, and then I kind of made a challenge to myself to complete all of the extra missions in the extras mode, which was maybe 30 to 50 missions, and my goal was to try to complete all of them solo. And some of the later missions will warn you about completing them solo and warn you to use co-op, so they're really not designed for that. But I did complete all of them except the final mission, which I did do in co-op. So for this mission, it's a gimmicky kind of mission. All you need to do is grab the baseball bats and just hit the enemies into those gongs in the background, and that's going to drop dynamite, and that'll wipe all the enemies out. So it's kind of just like a gimmick. So it starts off very easy. But yeah, there was no videos online for this mission mode. I couldn't find any videos, so I had to figure everything out through trial and error. So I came up with some interesting strategies. The difficulties of the missions is really varied. Like you'll have later missions that are pretty damn easy, and then you'll have some earlier ones that are pretty damn hard. So it's really all over the place. But there was, one mission that took me 4 hours. It was the Machine Gun Willie fight with 4 Machine Gun Willie clones. There was that fight, and then there was one mission that took me 16 hours and 20 minutes, of course, to complete solo. And that was the fight with the 4 Guardian bosses. So it's a much harder version of the 4 Guardian boss fight, specific to this mission mode. So you will see that later. But this may be the only video covering the missions. I don't know if anybody really gives a shit about them. The game wasn't too popular. It got shit on pretty bad by reviews, but I thought it was one of the best beat-em-ups that I've played. Once you get used to some of the nuances of it, some parts are still clunky, don't get me wrong. Picking up weapons can be a pain in the ass to do consistently. I don't really use the ground stomp at all unless it's an emergency, because it's just so inaccurate for me, But so there's things like that even, my muscle memory got a lot better with executing some of the clunkier commands after playing for so many hours. Because this took me, I believe, around 33 hours and 35 minutes to beat this mission mode, which I may have stated in the beginning of the video. But, I probably have, over 50 hours on the game by the time I reached the end of this mode. So my muscle memory was pretty dialed in with most of the commands and stuff. I had played it enough to get pretty accustomed to doing things quickly and accurately, but you'll see me fuck up even doing simple things sometimes, just because it is clunkier than it should be, but other aspects of the gameplay, great. It's just there's certain things that are a little janky. So we start off with these protection missions. The Abobo fight that just occurred is nothing special to what you would be doing in the normal campaign. You'll fight harder boss fights on normal mode in the campaign than an Abobo fight, so not much to say for that. I'm also going to be watching these as I comment, obviously. I'm not doing this live. I don't really do live commentary when I'm playing through hard shit, so I'm commenting after the fact. So some of these missions I beat many weeks ago, so it's not fresh. I don't even remember a lot of them, so I'm going to be kind of, trying to remember and highlight things that are important, that are easy to miss. So, of course, knock the guys into the pit using your background shot that knocks the enemies into the pit, which the Double Dragons both have background hits. The other two characters don't, it seems. So, you want to use sometimes certain characters for certain missions, and 90% of the time I use this character. The other Double Dragon, the whatever the fuck his name is, does have a back attack as well that knocks enemies into the background. That would be your triangle or your Y button, depending on what console you're playing on. Maybe X on the Switch, but I don't really recommend playing this game on the Switch unless you don't have a choice, because it's at 30 frames per second. It does feel a lot jankier. It's a lot better on the other consoles and on PC. I'm sure. I haven't played it on PC, but I would assume so. I'm playing on Series X here, and it played great for what it is. So these protection missions where I was protecting the pillar starts off really easy with only one pillar to protect, but later it's going to get pretty fucking hard at points, because the game, later missions are really designed for co-op, where you can revive each other and you have 2 players, so you can have 1 player protecting each pillar, and it's a lot more organized. When you're trying to manage everything as a single player, it makes some of these challenges interesting. You know what I mean? Though most of the protection missions and things didn't take me super long compared to some of the other. There was a few brutal missions, you know, that were pretty fucking brutal. Mainly that one mission, and the final mission's a bitch. I did give in for the final mission after playing it for over an hour. I just didn't feel like grinding hours and hours on it to do it solo. I mean, I could have if I played it enough, but I was like, fuck it, let me just do the last mission in 2-player and just get this mode over with so I can move on. Because I spent, like I said, over 33 hours on this little extra mission mode. I was kind of ready to be done with it. Especially after spending over 16 hours on one mission, with the 4-boss fight. Again, we don't have anything challenging yet that really tests your skills compared to the main campaign. So it gets progressively more difficult. And you'll see that by the star ranking for each mission. But, like I said, the star ranking is not very accurate because some of the later missions are not even that hard. So it's all over the place. But generally, the missions are going to generally be a lot harder later on, in general. But it's not like a consistent thing where it always applies. There's easy missions near the end, too. So the way it works is you have to beat all the missions that lead up to the boss when you choose like a boss in the main menu. There's like 2 or 3, maybe 4 missions associated with that kind of tier to get up to the boss. And you have to complete those all, either leaving your system on or... but you can't shut the game off, basically. It will save after you complete, all the missions in that boss tier. But and if you die on a mission while you're trying to get to the boss, it'll give you a checkpoint. But if you shut it off, you lose those checkpoints. So if you're going to shut the system off, you want to at least try to complete all the missions in that group, so that you don't have to redo them again. Though sometimes I would redo them because, I wanted to try to bring full dragon meters to the later fights. But I'll mention that later. So this is where some of the controls get janky. Not that this is a hard mission, but missions like this and parts of the game where you can hang on these things on the ceiling and crash down can play pretty fucking shitty. Because it's very unresponsive when you jump near these light fixtures to grab onto them and to then slam down on the ground. Slamming down on the ground is easy, but it feels very janky when you're trying to grab onto those ceiling fixtures. So you got to get used to the muscle memory of your positioning on how to do that consistently. But for this mission, I guess maybe I wasn't utilizing them. Maybe this mission was still too easy. But you'll see me spamming these things later. And if you saw my hard tutorial, you'll see I did utilize the wall smashes and the from the jumping off the wall and smashing the ground and stuff like that. There is no walls here, I don't believe, but they give you these light fixtures where if you want, you can keep doing ground smashes. But for missions like this, you're on a timer that's fairly tight, so especially later. So you don't want to fuck around too much. It's not always the most time efficient to just keep slamming the ground, obviously. It just depends on the mission. Some missions it actually works, but it's not going to always be the most efficient thing. Sometimes it's better to just use some of the weapons and take care of the guys, normally. But later on, you'll develop strategies and routes for the different waves of enemies to take them out faster. You know what I mean? With counters and various things. But it hasn't gotten too complicated as of yet. It is getting tight here, though, But as I did on hard mode in the campaign, I use that big stick and I try to kind of save, most of the attacks with the big stick for the boss enemy. So I think I was trying to save at least one of the sticks for the boss. Because, each weapon that you pick up and use it has a limited amount of uses, and if you throw it, that counts as one of the uses too, so... Sometimes you want to conserve it and kind of budget it for certain enemies only, and there's a lot of that in the mission mode. Of, a lot of careful planning when they get really, really hard. But shit is still, fairly relaxed. It's more of a fun mode at this point of the game. It's not going to bust your balls too much. This one was kind of irritating for an early mission just because the enemies keep dropping down and breaking the boxes, if I remember correctly, which was kind of pissing me off a little bit. Not saying it's the hardest thing ever, but it is kind of fucking annoying. So I preferred to use this Hanzo ninja guy because he's the fastest character, I think, movement-wise, and I just want to get to the light fixtures quickly. So if I need to switch sides, I can run over to the other side quickly. In this game, you're always running. There's no double tap to run, which I kind of like. It's definitely unique in that sense, because every beat 'em up pretty much double tap to run, except for the really old ones. But in this, you just run all the time, which is kind of convenient once you get used to it. You can really move between enemies and do some cool crowd control shit, which I really like. I may review this game at some point, and I'll go over some of the things I like about this game a lot. But I would give it a high score. I did really enjoy it. But yeah, the idea with breaking all those boxes was to just keep, I think I mainly stayed on the right side for most of that. And then I think near the end I might shift over to the left to destroy some boxes. But it was, if you follow that path the way I did it, it shouldn't take you too long. Hopefully this video will help some players because there was no video footage at all of the missions when I was looking for shit to come up with some ideas and shit. Nobody was playing it. So I don't know why there's no videos of it, but there may be at some point. But this may be the first one. So, maybe some players will have their own strategies or they can maybe build off some of this. So this is nothing too special. This is just the bosses that you fought in the campaign, but now you got to do it kind of quick. So you could use your spin kick to kind of like, as they land, it won't really do an official counter, but it may stop you from getting hit and it may damage them a little bit. For that part, you're supposed to get in cover, but if you miss it, it doesn't do massive damage. So get these dual sticks here. They do a lot of damage. So I do suggest using them, and if you can, try to group them together and hit them both at the same time, but if not, don't worry about it. But I like to try to do a lot of crowd control grouping, to get, you might as well damage two people at once or multiple people at once when you can. And also countering is huge in this game. When the enemies turn blue, if you hit them when they flash blue, you get a counter, which does big damage, and it fills your dragon meter really fast for your dragon attack, which is like a screen clearing attack. So, that's fucking huge. And it usually dizzies the enemy too, so it has a lot of advantages. So we're still in the 2-star difficulty range. Later on, you're going to see that the game has like a warning on the screen about, advising you against playing the mission solo. So that's where it starts to get more fun. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was definitely fucking frustrating on some of the missions, that's for sure, trying to manage everything as a solo player. And like I said, I did cave in on the end. I know I could have done the last mission if I would have played it long enough, but I was a little sick of this mode, even though it's a great fucking mode. I'm not saying it's well balanced. That's what I kind of like about it, though. It's kind of ridiculous, so it's an interesting challenge to try to puzzle it out and execute it, It's kind of like, they're kind of like combat puzzles, basically, which are kind of interesting to figure out. You kind of just route your way through the missions like you would with anything that's difficult, old arcade, games and shit like that, where you got to really find routes through the areas. And, you try to, improvise when needed. But with all the enemies, this game can feel pretty dynamic, which is nice, because there's a lot of enemies on screen. So the background punch, your Y move, based on the Xbox controls I was using here, is great because you can knock enemies all back into each other and group them all together. And you can also combo in a charge punch in the middle of your combos to push enemies back into each other. So there's a lot of grouping techniques that will be used more later on the harder missions, But you don't have to do anything too fancy for these early missions, but it's worth mentioning because I may not get a chance to mention some of this stuff later when the action is moving faster. With denser combat encounters. So this is nothing special. This is a boss fight where you also got to defeat 30 enemies, but the enemies are kind of like an afterthought. You don't really have anybody too hard here. These enemies are not the most difficult, enemy types. It's mostly just, your generic, like regular thug type of enemies. You got a spiked bat you can use, and you may want to save that for the boss because these enemies are not anything special that are going to take you too much time. The hammer is great, and if you really need to, you could probably do some nice damage on the boss. I don't know if I was... Yeah, I think I was doing some slams. I missed one there. But that hammer slam is one of the biggest damage dealers of any weapon, so landing that on the boss would probably be pretty effective, and it has a great area of effect, meaning that it has like splash damage. It'll take out a bunch of enemies that are around the boss too, so these are things you can utilize. I never got good at this boss fight. It was never, that difficult even on hard mode. And I wasn't doing a 1cc or anything, so, I would just fight him a few times until I broke through. So I definitely don't know this guy's, all this guy's moves to counter them and do all that kind of stuff. Nothing fancy. But I usually just keep the attack on him, and if I think he's going to do something, I'll try to do my cyclone attack to kind of offset it so that I don't take damage, or I get some damage on him. Sometimes I'll get the counter because I'll flash blue during some of his attacks. So I'll just consider that a lucky hit because I'm not really setting up for that. I don't really, like I said, I don't really have it down that well. But this guy is not going to be too demanding. So, I mean, eventually you'll just win by sheer, volume. By just keep playing this mission, you'll beat it probably after a few tries. If you've done the campaign already on normal, you're probably not going to have too much trouble with this. So once this guy's down, just remember you do still have to clear out the remaining enemies, but it's usually easier once the boss is out of the way. Though this boss is not super aggressive, but he is annoying because he does that tornado that kind of sucks everyone in. Mostly your character, I think, but it is annoying because it does interrupt what you're trying to do. So it's good to get him out of there. We got some dynamite assholes, and the samurai guys are some of the tougher enemies, but not the toughest, but they're a little harder to deal with. But, you should be able to smack him around, and you probably won't even need to use your dragon screen clearing move, which really takes a long fucking time to build up at times. So I don't really use it in a lot of missions until later on, because it's not the easiest thing to build up. So now we're on the next tier of missions. These are 3-star difficulty, according to the game. I don't even remember exactly what these missions are, but we'll see. I played this over the course of, quite a few weeks. I was kind of on and off. So here I'm trying to use the spin to take out those rocks. I think this was before I realized that if I use the triangle punch, the background attack, it probably takes those rocks out in one hit if I had to guess, because it does with other items, boxes and such. So I think I was actually doing this very inefficiently, but try using the triangle punch and that'll probably take the rocks out very quickly, maybe 1 or 2 hits. It's probably the way to go. When those Abobos pick up a rock, they're going to flash blue. So if you wait for them to flash blue, you can get a very easy counter. If you just attack them while they're flashing blue, any attack will work. And by doing that, you're going to get your dragon meter up and you're going to do massive damage to them. It may even stun them. So I don't know if I was as efficient with the game by this point of the game. This is early into the missions. I had probably completed hard mode by this point, but I got a lot better after getting to the end of this mission mode because it forced me to get better at some point. But this was early on. You might want to complete the campaign on hard mode before you attempt this mission mode, just because there's going to be much harder variations of what you dealt with in hard mode. Just the way the missions are laid out, there's going to be a few that are going to be super fucking hard. So if you're planning to do it solo, I'm just giving you my solo strategies. It's very different if you're playing this in co-op. Some missions can still take hours even in co-op. That's how hard it is to even solo them, because even if you're playing co-op with revives, it can be very hard. And solo can just be fucking insane. But at least that was my experience. But most people aren't going to really give a shit about trying to solo all the missions. It was just something that I wanted to do. And like I said, I did it except for the final mission, so I didn't actually fully complete what I wanted to do. But it was good enough for me in the end. I was kind of sick of fighting Raymond. I dealt with him a bunch of times. There's a much harder version of him at the end of the final mission. I'm not sure how long that would have taken me solo. I had one decent attempt after maybe an hour or two. But I still had a lot of work to do if I wanted to get the time down, because it's tough to beat him on a strict timer when it's like a super hard version of that boss, like an enhanced version with some enhanced moves and shit that have more range and other bullshit. He's more evasive, and it's just a pain in the ass. So this was very sloppy. This may have been a mission I beat on the first try or so, because this is really unrehearsed, just sloppy shit. See, I flew off the fucking map, but it was good enough. So I wouldn't say that there's going to be much challenge there. I think that's an easy one to bullshit your way through. So this boss can be hard on hard mode before you get used to him. And he's tricky on normal as well the first time, but with missions like this, I would suggest usually just focusing on the boss, and while you're fighting the boss, you'll destroy boxes and shit, and while you're fighting the boss. But for this mission, I really just focus on the gold ones. Will give you more points, but since it's on a tight timer, I prefer to focus on the boss, because if you destroy all the boxes and the boss is still alive, then I believe you still fail the mission. So, I would say just prioritize the boss, and you can kind of ignore the boxes until you're done with the boss. And remember that wall combos. When you repeatedly strike somebody against the wall, if you get the range right, you'll do a wall combo animation, which when it goes into that animation, you get invincibility frames, and it does massive damage to enemies. So it's one of the best moves in the game. So you want to try to do that as much as possible when you can hit enemies against the wall. Of course, the dynamite interrupted me there, but you want to do it whenever you can. But you have to have the range just right. If the guy's bouncing around, you won't get it. He has to be kind of planted on the ground when you're punching him around. For this, you want to kind of let the enemy tire himself out, and then you can counter him when he's blue, but it's kind of a mess here. As far as dodging the fire, there's an easy way to tell when the fire is going to come out of those doors. You just have to look at the sirens. When the sirens are lit up on top of a door, that means that's the door that's going to open up and spray fire out. So try to keep an eye on that. I played it pretty sloppy in that mission, but it was good enough. It can be tricky when multiple doors open one after another to try to time it, but that's the idea. So with this, there's some items you can use on the field, like kicking the basketballs, which will give you some extra damage and shit like that. But this is a very easy mission from what I remember. Some of these early missions are just kind of more like fun missions, but they're not, difficult. If you're playing this in co-op, it's going to be very different strategies for some of the harder missions, but either way, it might be interesting to see how you can do them solo, some strats. I don't know if you can reach those dynamite enemies up at the top. They're really high up, so you don't need to deal with them. I'm saving up my dragon for maybe a harder enemy or something like that, or when there's more enemies on screen, because right now it's pretty damn easy, but it is getting close, so I may end up using it soon. Yeah, that's probably what I was waiting for. This will probably rack up a bunch of kills using it here. Yeah, now I have one guy left to take out, so that wasn't too bad. It was getting a little tight. So for this was super easy, is all I remember. Just focus on breaking the walls, I believe. I think that's all you really need to do here. If you get thrown around a little bit, not a big deal. If you want to keep him off your ass, maybe do a cyclone kick to kind of, prevent him a little bit. But if he kicks you across the map, it's kind of useful anyway. You don't even have to worry about breaking the boxes for points. You can just go for the walls. I think if he slams you through the wall, you may not get credit for it, but either way, I remember this being super easy. If you get to the end, you may even just beat it. I don't remember. I remember it being. I think it just ends. Maybe you got to take him out now. I don't even remember. Oh yeah, you get a gold box at the end, so they kind of just give it to you. See, now there's just gold boxes dropping down, so it's pretty much just get thrown to the end. You don't even have to do well. As long as you make it through that gate at the end, you'll get some gold boxes. So super easy. So now we're completing this boss tier. This one was tricky. I remember this took me a while. It may have taken me 30 to 60 minutes. I don't remember. I think it took a little while. So from the campaign, you'll remember that you have to knock enemies into those pillars to destroy them. And you can only do that when Linda, the boss, is standing on top of one of the pillars. So it can be a pain in the ass. You can also do wall combos against the pillars, like you see me doing here. It does work. You know, most wall type of surfaces you can do wall combos on, including even some waist-high items like barrels and stuff like that. It is useful to know that later on, but you know, you can use those to take out some of the enemies, but taking out the enemies is not really the focus here because you really need to focus on the boss, so don't worry about that too much. Try to lure the enemies over to the pillars or try to grab them and throw them into the pillars. You have multi-directional throwing, which is really good. And you can throw enemies like, you know, like in a good amount of different positions. So you saw I used the diagonal throw there, basically, or a push. But you want to prioritize throwing enemies or knocking enemies into the pillars that Linda is standing on to get her down so that you can damage her. That's the main goal. And then I think I used wall combos on Linda herself once I got her down because that's the best way to do damage to her before she goes back up and retreats. What's hard about this mission, it's hard to damage her enough in the time limit, you know, because she's very evasive and has all these bullshit moves. She keeps jumping up on the pillar. So you want to focus on doing powerful moves on her if you could push her to one of the walls and then wall combo her. I also learned late that you can grab enemies and bosses and bring them up to the back wall in the background, you know, the vertical wall. And if you drag them over to the vertical wall and hit B, you'll do a wall smash throw attack. Does massive damage just like the wall combo, and we'll see that later. I believe I do use it later on some missions. It's super useful for certain parts. But I'm trying to get her against the wall, basically, for this part. See, I'm doing these wall combos. That's giving me massive damage. So, and I got another one to finish it off. So that was really, really good. I may still need to finish off the last enemy. I don't remember. No, maybe that was it. But you see, it was tight. It's a difficult mission. But you can knock enemies into those pillars and throw them into the pillars. So try to prioritize that when she's up on them. And then focus on moving her towards one of the walls. Or you can even move her towards a pillar if you're good at wall comboing against the pillars. You got to be pretty precise to do that with your positioning, but it is possible. This one's a little tricky for an earlier protection mission because there's only one area to protect, but it gets pretty aggressive. I had to get some decent strats with, you know, keeping these enemies off the pillars. There's a lot of crowd control, you know, knowing which enemies to knock back into which enemies to try to avoid them damaging the pillar. And now we have a boss moving around in here, so it gets a little aggressive. You can use the ground attacks like you see me use there, but I don't do them super often because most of the time they don't work for me. You got to be positioned really precisely. But sometimes I pull them off decently. But it's always a little bit of a risk for me to use them. So I'm doing a decent job so far of keeping these guys off of this pillar by using a lot of the knockback attacks that knock the enemies towards the background wall. You know, that bunches them together, and the charge punch is good for knocking everybody back into each other. The hurricane kick is a good quick move to just knock enemies away. Even though it's not great for damage, it'll get the guys off of the pillar. You can use those charge punches, like I said, to push the guys all the way to the back of the screen. And that give you a little breathing room, so that's the general strat. But I also had to just get used to like what attacks I was going to do on certain enemies. These are the most annoying enemies in this mission. They're really aggressive. They do a lot of damage, and they really go aggressive on the pillar. They can take it out pretty fast. So this part was pretty fucking annoying. But you want to try to crowd control them if possible. Of course, if you have your dragon meter filled up, probably now is the time to use it on these assholes. I didn't quite have it filled up yet. I don't know if I ended up getting it full in time, but I think these guys are the main... This is probably the end of the mission, but it's very fucking annoying with all these assholes. You just got to try to crowd control pretty aggressively. You got to be pretty precise with your crowd control. You see it was really close. But that is the last part. So if you have your dragon meter built up, or if you can focus on doing moves that build the dragon meter faster, like wall combos against the pillar maybe, but I don't know if that's a good idea. It might damage the pillar. But you can try some different things to get your dragon meter up faster if you know how to build it faster. And maybe you'll have it ready for that wave, because then you could take those guys out probably easily with a screen-clearing dragon move. So this mission is a little bit challenging, though I don't think it was quite as hard as the last mission. But it is tricky. It did take me a little while. I think I was trying to save some of the weapons, but I start off with the big stick, and I try to time the stick swing so that I get the counters on those enemies. You'll see multiple of them will flash blue, and you can get a wide sling and hit like 2 or 3, and do like 2 or 3 counters at the same time, which massively builds your meter. So I'm trying to get 2 full dragon meters here to use on the later waves. So that's why I'm using this stick, but I'm focusing on hitting them all at the same time when they're blue. And that's, you know, and I'm trying to get as many counters as I can just to get all my meter up. And, you know, all the damage it does as well. So I use one of my dragons here to clear them out, because, you know, you don't have a super amount of time, and the shield enemies are annoying to damage, you know, when you don't have a lot of time, because they block your frontal attack. So you got to try to hit them in the background and get behind them, and they can be a pain in the ass. So I'm trying to take them out fast. I still have a dragon meter in reserve, 1 dragon orb. So I have 1 special attack already charged up and waiting. And I'm working on getting my second one back that I just used. So if I can get a counter, I'll go for it. But I don't have tons of time to fuck around. There is a hard part in this mission where there's a bunch of those abobos. There's a shitload of them near the end. So that's why I want pretty much 2 dragon meters to like start thinning them out. Because it can be tough when you got tons of them. These guys are like fodder enemies, so just knock them in the background and they're going to die really fast. Get the stick again. Smack these guys. Try to hit like 3 of them at once, see like I did there. Now my meter is maxed out. And it took them out quickly, obviously. See how I grouped them together like that? I feel like it's kind of designed for you to get the stick and do that. I mean, that's just... It seemed like an obvious thing to do to me when I was playing. Certain missions, there's like certain designs sometimes that make it easier, it seems. So try to hit these abobos when they're turning blue, when they're picking up the rock, because you'll get massive damage and you'll keep your meters up. I still need 11 more enemies, so I may use a dragon soon, because this is getting a little fucking testy here. So I use one of my dragon orbs here, and this is going to get the numbers up. Now I got 7 more enemies left and I got quite a bit of time left, so I'm in real good shape right now. Getting those counters in, which is really good, keeping the meter up, doing a lot of damage. And now I'm using my other dragon orb. It didn't really give me a lot of kills or anything, or any kills I don't think, but it got these guys really weak now at this point, to where I think 1 counter will kill most of these guys, so... and my meter is almost back up at 100 as well, so I may get another use out of it. I got like a minute left. Health is not great, but this is not too hard to survive at this point. Just don't want to get too sloppy, but... And now I use my dragon. That's probably going to give me the victory. But it is a little tricky. You know, once you kind of map it out and learn that you can use the wooden the large wooden stick to hit multiple of them with one swing. Like 3 of them, you can get 3 counterattacks with one swing when they're all blue. So you set that up right. That can be really helpful. And just remember to save your dragon orbs for the Abobo wave. Try to save them up for that. That was the main strat that I remember using for that. So this, I think this is a pretty easy one. You might have to fight Machine Gun Willie. I think I comboed the fuck out of him against the wall. I did something weird here, I think, if this is the right mission. I'm thinking, yeah. I was able to kind of like stay within the wall and just keep wall comboing him. And I use this technique later in the 4 Willies fight, but it's not the easiest thing to pull off. But see, I was kind of hitting him from the wall, like back smacking him, like back fisting him or some shit. And I wall comboed the shit out of him, and I took him out really fast. But that wasn't the easiest thing initially to figure out. And my best advice to pull that off is to kind of stay right on the wall in that gap between him and the wall, and try to just stay in there and stay like mid-range from the wall, so you can keep smacking him against the wall whenever you get a chance, and try to get as many wall combos as you can, because it's going to wipe him out fast. And if you don't do that, it may be a little tricky. But I found that was a pretty easy little exploit. So now the difficulty is ramping up according to the game, but it doesn't warn you yet about playing in solo mode. Later, the next tier, I think, is where you get the warning for the first time, where it advises you that you should play it in co-op. And some of those get more interesting. But there's still a good chunk of game left. So these ninjas can be annoying with all the disappearing and attacking and retreating and all this shit. So try to manage them the best you can. That was a short fucking mission. I forgot what the goal was. Shit, I would have to read the goal on that again. I don't know. I guess just be really fucking aggressive. I don't even remember what the goal for that mission was. It's a short timer on that one. But it actually looked easy. It was short. I don't think that's too bad. Like I said, I don't really remember, exactly everything with all the missions. It was a while ago. So defeat the powerful foe. I think this is the one that has a tricky boss. He's generally a pretty easy boss when you're fighting him like under normal conditions without a timer. But I think this one took me a while because it was hard to take this guy out within the time limit, because it's a tight timer. There's already only like about a minute left, so I'm doing my wall combos against this spiked thing. You can still wall combo against it, luckily. So I'm trying to get as many of those as I can. That's my strat. And I'm not too concerned about the enemies, but they're kind of in the fucking way. I think the sticks work well too here. So if I can get the sticks, I think I'm going to start smacking the shit out of them with the stick. Try not to waste the stick too much on the enemy. Use them on the boss, because that's the main thing you have to do here, is take out the boss, if I remember right. I don't remember if you have to clear out the enemies too, but the boss is going to be the main asshole to take out first, because, he's obviously the hardest guy with the most fucking health to deal with. You can also do wall combos against multiple enemies, so if you can group them together like that, it'll thin out the crowd a little bit. And now I'm down to 9 seconds, so I got the boss out. Let's see if I have to finish off I don't think I have to finish off the enemies. So you only have to take out the boss, so, try to ignore the enemies as much as you can, but that one did take me a little while. I don't think we're talking hours or anything like that, but it did take a little while. I only remember a few of the missions that took me super long, like the 4 Willies took me like 4 hours. That was notable. And then the one mission took me 16 hours and 20 minutes. That was really fucking unusual. That one was definitely burning me out. It's a combination of a lot of things that made that mission super fucking hard. Because of that one mission, I ranked this mode in my top 15, hardest, gaming feats that I completed. And completing that mission solo was one of them. And there's only 15 entries out of about 4,000 games I completed, so it's rare. So that one really stood out. And second to that was probably the Willy fight with the 4 machine gun Willies, but that was 4 hours. But that wasn't super extreme, but it was fucking hard. But it wasn't like you're sitting there for 16 hours and 20 minutes trying to beat it. Not in one session, obviously. I would play for like maybe an hour or two when I played, but and it wasn't always every day. But I tried to be fairly consistent. But I think I took a break on that 4 boss fight for a little while. I was getting pretty burnt out. But I was like, fuck it, this would be something cool to do and cool to comment over. And I liked, completing like extreme shit on games that I enjoy. And occasionally I do it on games that I despise, but that's a little bit more rare. But it is always tempting, to get entries on the kill list, whether it be an extreme mode or completion or, challenge, or just beating a really hard fucking game is always really satisfying in the end, even if it sucks. Even though it kind of sucks at the time to play some of them. But at least this is a really, really good fucking game, at least to me. I really like it a lot. So it's not like playing a shitty game for 17 hours or whatever. So at least there's that. So for this, you're just trying to get 500 points. I guess you got to just be under the pots and spinning, basically. I think the spin is the best way to go about it. Cyclone kick. I was actually using a scuff controller, which is overkill, but that's pretty much like the fucking pro fucking controller bullshit, but I kind of like the rubber grips. So I'll get shit like that. I like fucking around with different controllers, but the main thing that was good about the scuff controller, any controller with good back paddles on the back of the controller, was that I would map my cyclone attack to the back paddles. So I didn't have to take my fingers off of the face buttons, I could hit that cyclone kick whenever I wanted to, pretty much effortlessly. So I think that was a nice use of that feature, Whenever I find a creative use for it, I'll map it. Especially on a game that's this fucking, a mode that's this difficult at times. So mainly just focus on taking out the objects, keep the assholes off of you, the one asshole that was messing around. I think he throws grenades, so try to smack him around. But, as long as you're watching where the shadows are of the items that are falling, it's pretty fucking easy. So 50 enemies. I forget if this was a hard one. I gotta watch this again, but it seems like a pretty, not a super long timer, so it might be tricky. I don't think this one was too hard. It doesn't stand out as one I remember, so. I do remember some of the really fucking hard ones, and there was a few, like I said. There were also some ones that took over an hour to beat and stuff like that, which is notable. But, I really remember when I'm spending 4 hours on one mission, or, 16 hours and 20 fucking minutes. I'll remember that shit. The final mission still took me around 3 hours, even when I decided to play it in co-op with my friend who had never played this game before. So it was not a great place to start learning how to play the game. But in the end, having him as a co-op partner helped a lot, and he was learning pretty quickly. So it ended up working out really well. I dealt most of the damage because I knew the boss pretty well, but I had played it solo more than enough at that point. Because you face Raymond a bunch of times in the game, between normal, hard mode, and he doesn't even show up in the mission mode more than once. So I did know how to counter him, pretty decently. Even though it was like a super version of the boss, but there were still principles that were similar, But you just have to modify how you do some things. So this mission doesn't look too difficult, like anything that stands out. You got these sticks, which you can use to knock a lot of guys out. Since the enemies attack you so frequently, it seems like they're countering themselves while I'm in the middle of attacking. So I wasn't even trying to counter that asshole. So, that's going to build my dragon meter and do massive damage. And I see weapons all over the fucking place. So the whip is a nice fucking weapon for hitting a bunch of enemies at once. So, use that. Get the sledgehammer and do some jumped charge attacks where you jump with the sledgehammer and then hold the button down and then release it. And you'll do huge damage with the sledgehammer. I don't even think I really even use that too much in this mission. Yeah, nothing too difficult. So now the main boss of this set is going to be this Joji guy again, which is one of the easiest bosses. So I don't think the boss is going to be too challenging. I don't remember what the actual missions were, but I don't think there's anything too hard here. Yeah, I think this is pretty simple. You know, ignore the enemies and smash the boxes. Now this was before I knew I could smash the boxes in one hit by using the overhand, the background punch, basically. I don't think I really knew about that at this point, which would have saved me a lot of effort. And I was still able to do it. I don't remember it being that hard. But just focus on the boxes. And use that background punch. Don't follow what I'm doing here. Just only use the background punch. Don't bother with regular attacks. You know, unless you're trying to do something with the enemies. But I wouldn't really bother with the enemies. Remember that I wasn't dashing a lot at this point. So, you know, use the dash button, the right bumper or the left bumper. I forget which one it is. And the other bumper is to block, which I didn't end up blocking in this game at all, even for the challenges, until like I would fight. Maybe the Raymond fight on hard is when I started doing that on the campaign. But I don't use blocking much at all. I try to either dodge and counter or you know, get out and then come back with an attack. But yeah, just focus on the boxes. Nothing too crazy. They give you a decent amount of time here too. So if you're mostly ignoring the enemies, you know, it's easy enough. Remember, you can use the background punch to knock enemies into the background, into the hole in the back. I think you can knock enemies off the left and right edges too, possibly, but definitely in the background. And that will auto, you know, that kills them in one hit, so it's always good. I was wasting too much time here fighting the enemies when I should have just been only focusing on the boxes. I think it's a waste of time to fight the enemies. But I wasn't as proficient with these missions at this point. I don't think so. I would say just, you know, try to ignore these assholes. I mean, if one is about to hit you, you might want to counter it or something, but you don't really have to spend a lot of time on the enemies. You only need to get 700 points, so, and you got a lot of time. And I wasn't even focusing on the boxes, and I still had a minute left. You know, I was wasting a little bit too much time on the enemies. So there's a lot of room for error. So the combo missions, usually the best character to use is Marianne, but I didn't know that at this time. When it says chain 50 combos, it means a 50-hit combo, which means you got to land 50 hits within a certain amount of time without taking a single hit. And this character I don't think is really, you know, the best character for combos, but I guess it wasn't too bad because I don't remember this being difficult. The cyclone attack will give you some multi-hit for your combos, so that's useful. Try to get in a crowd and just cyclone spin, and this shouldn't be hard. This looks easy with the cyclone spin, so maybe that was a good character to use for this. But generally, the Marianne character is the one I use in the later missions for the combo missions. So you'll see that later. She's really good at racking up a high number of combo. I think this mission took me over an hour. This was a pain in the ass, but not for the right reasons. I think there was I was missing there was items that I could have destroyed for points that I kept missing. I didn't realize that they were worth anything. So I think it took me a really long time. But you're going to want to kind of follow the items that I destroy here and the way I move. So once I destroy certain items, I'm going to move to the next area. And since I don't remember exactly what I did, I would say follow what I'm doing here and it should work. See, I'm using the hammer slam against those walls, and it's breaking other stuff on the other side of the wall because you don't have a lot of time to get all these points. But you see, I already got a lot of the points. But the reason this took me so long is there was stuff that was worth a lot of points that I wasn't destroying, like tiny boxes and shit. So my best advice is to look at what I'm destroying, you know, because there was no videos, remember, when I beat this. So, you know, if I was missing something, I just had to figure it out through playing it repeatedly. I mean, it looked like I had hit most of the stuff, but I think there were some small boxes or something that I kept missing that I didn't think were really worth anything. But you pretty much want to destroy everything, from what I remember. Like, most everything is worth something. Those little 3 points that you get for destroying small items adds up a lot. And I probably should have been using my background punch, but I was using the ninja because he moves faster, I think. I think that's why I went with the ninja for this. Because I can move really fast through the stage and break shit. So you may want to try using a ninja. And then here you're going to get infinite respawns of these boxes. They're going to just keep dropping in sets of 2. And you would think that would be useful for just standing here the whole time and beating the mission, but they're only worth 3 points each, so you won't rack up enough points if you only focus on those 2 boxes again and again. You also get mobbed pretty bad by enemies if you stand there for a really long time, which it becomes less of an efficient area, but it will help you if you're close to your goal. It'll help you get those extra points at the end. But it's slow to get the numbers up in that area. But you pretty much want to try to destroy everything in that mission. So yeah, that is a hard one. As far as that's the hardest mission as far as breaking boxes is concerned. As far as where the goal is where you got to break a certain amount of shit, that's the hardest one. So this is similar to the last time we did this fight with all the minions. I don't remember this being much different. I guess now the idea is you got to break 500 points worth of items, but I mean, you're going to break all that shit anyway, probably, when you're fighting the enemies. Now, if enemies knock you into the boxes, you don't get credit for them points-wise, but I don't remember being too concerned about that. I would just end up breaking shit anyway, because they'll give you, I think they'll give you gold boxes and shit near the end or something. I don't remember this being difficult. So I wouldn't even worry about the boxes. Just focus on the boss. Take the boss out, and then you can focus on all the boxes. Because you're going to have to, I think you have to kill the boss anyway, so you might as well, just take him out first. It's kind of hard to take the boss out and take all the boxes out at the same time in this area, so I think it's better focus on, taking the boss down. So I got a good counter on him there by luck, I think. And now I can focus on getting the remaining boxes, which is pretty easy to do once there's no boss. There's going to be some assholes that interrupt you, Of course, if you get your dragon meter, you can wipe out all the boxes that are on screen, too, so that does work if you have it. If you get enough counters, you could probably get a dragon meter there, and at least one, and use it, but you don't need it. I believe you can have a player join in at any time, before the mission in co-op. I think that's how it works, but I was trying to solo everything, and and then like I said, I only gave in on the final mission because it just was like, fuck it. This one is tricky. I remember this one being tricky. It didn't take super long, but it was a pain in the ass. So you want to focus on these hammer slams to knock guys back, but it's a pain in the ass because of the conveyor belts that are constantly delivering dynamite, which of course damages the thing you're trying to protect. And you're also being flooded by a decent amount of enemies. So once the harder enemies come out, it gets trickier. Throwing is a good way to get enemies, off the cliff. So try to throw them left or right to get them out of there. Or use your charge punches. Throw these Molotovs to create a path of fire that covers both conveyor belts. And then the enemies will possibly run into the fire and die. Especially the motorcycle guys. That's the main. Because the motorcycle guys damage the pillar when they drive into it. So somehow one of the motorcycle guys still got through, and that does happen quite a bit. But it's not as bad as having them both run into it. The dynamite is the most irritating thing because it all kind of collects up at the bottom and, blows up the thing you're trying to protect. So you will have to try to, be aggressive with clearing these guys out and maybe throwing the dynamite out of the area. And of course, whenever the Molotovs appear, use them to create a fire path on the conveyor belts. It can help. So with this Abobo, I think I saved my dragon meter and used it on the Abobo, and it also damaged the assholes on the side of him. And then he fell off the edge. So if you can get him off the edge, that's going to make it a lot easier. But at that point, you only have 3 enemies to deal with. So when the Abobo comes out, so it shouldn't be too bad. Just try to fight him away from the pillar you're trying to protect, obviously. And try to fight him near a pit that you can knock him into. So let's see what this shit is. I don't even remember. Oh yeah, this one really not too bad. You can pretty much spam the ground slams using the environment. So use RT to swing and then hit your Y button to do a ground pound and just keep spamming that. Like I said, the controls for that are very anal, so it may take some getting used to doing it when you want to do it, because a lot of times you'll jump and not grab the thing and it wastes your, you just land and you land without any kind of move and it fucks it all up and you get hit. So it's annoying. But for most of this, I think you can ground pound through most of this and wipe most of the enemies out. Just don't waste your ground pounds by doing them on the wrong side where there's no enemies. You want to be pretty efficient with switching sides as need be where most of the enemies are, because you don't have a lot of time to do it. It's a pretty tight timer even when you do the ground pound, but you can do that for most of this mission, so this shouldn't be too bad. It gets a little tight, but it shouldn't be too difficult. If a strategy is not working, later in the fight, maybe switch it up a little bit, and don't spam the ground pounds as much if you're relying too much on them. But this is one mission where you can kind of just keep spamming it. It works pretty well. So this is a hard wave of enemies with all these ninjas, so the ground pound is a good way to get them all out of there, because you'll probably get some counters when you do them and you keep spamming them, and the ninjas can be a pain in the ass to deal with normally anyway when there's so many of them, so it's probably better to spam it there. So this is another destruction mission, probably not too hard. I think this is an easy one. Yeah, so you can use the cyclone kicks here. This seems efficient enough. Or use your hit where you do your background strike. You can also counter these guys very easily if you're used to dealing with them in the campaign. If you time your cyclone at the right time, that's an easy way to do it, because it gives you, like, when you do your cyclone kick, it gives you, like, a second or two to land a hit, since it has a long duration to it, so you don't have to be as precise if you use the cyclone to counter stuff. It gives you a little bit more room for error. At least it seems to. That's what I found. It seems to give you a little bit more time to counter certain attacks. But mainly, you're just going to be ignoring the enemies. Don't worry about them. Just focus on breaking the boxes. You may want to counter some of the enemies if they're just happening to rush into you, because they will home in on your last location when they charge. So if they happen to be coming right at you, you may want to counter them. But I was getting a lot of counters here, but you really don't have to. It's nothing you have to master for this mission. You get some more valuable boxes near the end. Basically, the wooden boxes are worth less, the silver are worth more, and then the gold are worth the most. So those are the ones you want to prioritize. If you see boxes that are worth more than the others, prioritize them first, because the enemies may destroy them first. So that's always just a basic rule in these missions. This one's kind of tricky because there's two pillars that you have to protect. So I think there's two pillars. It starts off with one. So this is kind of like fucking Donkey Kong, where you can throw these barrels down at the enemies and they have to try to platform to get up to you. So I thought that was kind of cool. But you can start off doing that, but eventually you're going to have to go down, because actually there is a small thing down there to protect another pillar down there. It's a smaller one, and the enemies are going at it already. So at some point you're going to want to move down, but you're going to kind of want to route it out to decide when you want to go down there and deal with the other enemies. But playing on single player, obviously, you're going to have to let some of the enemies attack the other pillars. I don't think there's a way around it. Where you can start to tell that this is kind of designed for two players. But this is not where it gets really hard with the protection missions and other things. Not yet. But this one is a little tricky. It didn't take me too long. The enemies aren't going... There's not really like super powerful enemies attacking the pillar like some of the earlier missions. So I didn't find this to be too difficult, but it was a little tricky. You're going to want to manage, how much damage you'll allow a pillar to take before you move back down and take care of the enemies down there. And you're going to have to go back and forth to manage the different ones. So once the boss comes out, I use my first dragon screen clearing attack to damage the boss heavily and clear out some of the enemies. And now I'm using the hammer jump attacks to take his health down really fast. So this is a really good way. See how much damage it does. So use those, save the hammers for the end, for the roper. And you should be able to finish him. And I didn't take too much damage to either pillar, so that little strategy worked pretty well. So this is another a Bobo boss mission. I don't remember the boss, the Bobo, being too difficult at the end. I don't remember any fights where a single Bobo was difficult. I think this one has some ceiling shit that you can swing on, but I'm not seeing it, so let's see what the strat was. I don't remember this one being too difficult. You can definitely wall combo the enemies in groups like that and take out multiple. Or maybe the bat is going to be good here. There's bats, whips. I see some shit like that, so that's probably good. You can take out the pillars, too, by throwing enemies into them like you did on the Linda fight. I think when enemies die to dynamite and shit like that, it counts in your favor. I know it does with the Molotov, so you're probably going to rack up some kills just from the environment. Because these guys are throwing dynamite everywhere, so there's that. Also, destroying the pillars does make this mission a lot easier from what I remember, because the guys on top of the pillars are going to keep throwing dynamite the whole time. So I would say try to take those pillars out as soon as you can. I do remember this being kind of tricky with all the shit on the ground. And I remember the best way to deal with this was to take out the pillar guys, so that you don't have to deal with all the dynamite everywhere. So whenever they appear, I guess try to throw enemies into those pillars. I think the barrels explode too, which takes out some enemies, so that's good. If you do get a full dragon meter, utilize that on the harder groups of enemies or when there's a lot of enemies on screen to rack up a bunch of kills. You want to use all that shit efficiently. For the barrels, once you hit them, they're on a little timer, so they're going to explode after a few seconds, I think. But that one didn't go off that time, but maybe you got to punch them a few times. You see, now it's counting down. And that's going to kill some guys, so it doesn't really damage you that much. So really not too bad, especially if you focus on those pillars. It's more of a fun mission. I don't remember this being too difficult. I think there's only one totem here to protect, one little pillar, so I think this one might be kind of tricky, though. But try to counter these guys for a quick takedown. And, of course, build the meter up. If you can knock them off the screen, obviously, with the background punch, that's really good. Remember that if you knock enemies all the way to the back, I don't think there's a pit in the back, actually, but there is electricity in the back of the map. So if you knock them in the background all the way to the electricity, they'll get stunned. They'll stand there with stars over their head. They'll be dizzy. So that's a trick we're going to use later on the 4 Bobo fight. Or not 4 Bobos, but 4 bosses at once. It's a really, really hard fucking version of that fight under a strict timer. So now it's probably going to be a good time to use this this dragon attack soon, I'm guessing. I got another counter. That's an easy way to get Dragon Meter with that charge move. It's easy to counter. Throwing guys is good to knock them back. Charge punches, stuff like that to keep the guys off all the shit. Best you can, anyway. So here I'm using my Dragon, which is a good time to use it. There was a lot of shit going on over there, so now we can ground stomp these Burkovs for the first time. This prevents them from, this kills them basically, so they can't respawn. Otherwise, they keep coming back 2 or 3 times until they finally leave. But when you're stomping the Burkov armor, like when you knock the big guys down and they teleport away and their armor falls on the ground, what you want to do is stand next to their armor and stand there for about half a second and wait for the RT prompt to appear, then hit RT. Don't try to do it while you're running over it or doing anything else. Just stand there for a second. Wait for the RT prompt to show up. You got to stand like right next to the flashing armor, then hit RT, and you'll be able to stomp them every time without too much trouble. I found that worked best for me rather than trying to rush it. So you got to be patient for about half a second. It's easy to kind of rush it and get sloppy. So just stand there until the prompt shows up, and then hit RT, and you should be able to do it pretty consistently after a while. So that's an easy Abobo counter to get, obviously. When he's holding the rock, he turns blue after a second or two. So, you want to wait for that sometimes. So now here we're destroying 45 enemies, but I think there's harder groups of enemies. But I don't remember this one being too difficult. It's a little challenging. May have taken a few tries. You can clear out a lot of enemies with these ground pounds because it's such a confined area. So, just try to do it on the side where the most enemies are. And eventually you're going to get a Dragon Meter as well, which is going to make things even easier. So I don't think this is too bad. It is getting a little tight here, but I think I saved the Dragon screen clearing attack for this final wave of these super annoying enemies. These guys are annoying when there's tons of them, so I would say save the Dragon, the screen clearing Dragon, for the last wave of those. Those are almost like final boss clone type of enemies. Those guys are like pretty much the toughest enemies in the game, so I would save it for that. Sometimes the main thing with these missions is to just budget your shit for the right moment and use it at the right moment. But of course, some of the hardest missions, that's not enough. You just have to be really consistent with your damage and the way you kind of group everything together, and some luck. So I guess the main boss to take out here is the Abobo. I think that's what you need to do. You got to do 30. It's a 30 combo mission. That's really easy. I guess you got to do a 30 combo and take out the boss is what I'm guessing. But if you want to make combos easier, it's probably better to use like the Marianne character, like I said, which I'm going to show later. So you can get an idea of that later when I do it. But this is easy enough. I mean, you can get 30 like fairly easily. You may get interrupted a few times, but I mean, you'll get it if you're using a lot of cyclone kicks and being pretty aggressive. And the Abobo is obviously one of the easier bosses by this point when he's alone. He's a pain in the ass later when he's with all the other bosses, but the single ones are pretty easy to deal with. See, it says multiplayer is recommended difficulty-wise. So this is when you first get that warning. And this is the semi-final set of missions. Basically, it has like, it's multiple tiers of missions, boss tiers, but it's the semi-final set of all of them. So it's starting to escalate at this point. And I think this set has a super hard mission that took me over 16 hours. I think it's in this. It's not in this particular tier right here, but it's coming up. So this one is just a little bit irritating with all the flames, but you see Marianne is getting the combo up fast even in this area. I just do regular attacks and I kind of back away from the flames in the middle of the screen, and then I was just spamming her When you do the cyclone attack with Marianne, she does like a rising knee that kind of descends into a jump kick or some shit. And it's really good for building up the combo meter. So I just spam that pretty much, and you should get it. It's not too hard. I think this one was a little tricky. This one was a little challenging from what I remember. You want to break that background glass by knocking enemies into it a bunch of times. And then you can start depositing all the enemies into the background. You know, you can knock them off the cliff basically and one hit kill them once you've broken that glass. So this is an area that's in the single player game as well. I think all these areas are. But yeah, once you break that, you can even group them together and hit multiple at once into the background. And take them off. You see how fast you can dispatch them. Because those are hard enemies, but they're not so hard when you can just hit them once and knock them into the background really fast. You can also do that with the stick, as you see with the second swing. So it's not too hard to do that initially. But it gets tricky because there's a lot of aggressive enemies. I'm trying to set him up for a background hit. You see I got knocked in the hole. But luckily, when you get knocked in a pit, you just lose some health, so it's not super unforgiving. So these guys are annoying because they kind of sit there and meditate, and it makes them very difficult to hit. So I'm kind of just ignoring them for now. And then, you know, I'm getting the dragon meter, so I can probably use that soon. Like, I'm going to use it here to take out these swords guys because I don't really like them too much. And then I can try to knock them back into the background, or I can jump kick to do the counter when they're charging up that. These guys should be easy to counter if I don't get too sloppy. I fucked that up, but usually they're easy to counter, so you may want to do that if you can. There's a counter, so that was good. Got another one. I think another one. Especially when they're all attacking. It's a little tricky because they attack at different intervals, so it can be a little tricky at a time, but if you can get a few counters in, you can get that dragon meter back up again. And I already still have like a minute left, and I'm taking, moving the guys into the pits pretty good. A lot of them are going in the fucking hole. So I may use a dragon here because these shield guys are irritating when you're pressed for time. So now we only have 3 enemies left. It's not too bad. Got a counter that killed him. So we got 2 more. That's about it. Got another counter. I think that wiped that guy out. I think you can knock the left and right walls out too. See where the glass is, so you may want to knock those out too. It's easy if you get charge punches, you can probably knock a bunch of enemies out of the left and right sides too. I usually just went for the background on that stage. I found it easier to do. So for this one, you got to take out 35 enemies. I don't remember how difficult this one was. I have to see. I think it's a little tricky because there's enemies up on pillars. And I think they throw shit everywhere. I think that was like, they might be spraying Molotovs over the fucking arena. Fire everywhere, if I remember right. You can use a little stripper pole to do a swing attack to knock some enemies back, but it's not super powerful. I believe you have walls here, though, so you can spam those wall jump attacks when it's useful to do so. You are pressed for time, so you don't want to continuously do it the whole time, but it can get pretty messy here if you don't take out these pillars because the fire fills up most of the arena, 75% of the arena, so you're probably going to want to take it out. I think they're also throwing grenades and shit. So use your background attacks and throws to take the pillars out as quickly as you can. And that's definitely going to help. These missions are already, getting harder on average. Nothing insane as of yet, but some tricky shit. At this point, the mission mode didn't seem that fucking difficult. You know, it was challenging, but it didn't seem like anything crazy. So it's not really until you get later into the game, till you get pretty far into the challenge mode, where it starts to have some missions that are ridiculous. But it's not, the whole thing isn't insane. You know, the reason it got on my blue highlight, my extreme ranking on my kill list, my games beaten list, you know, my spreadsheet, is because of that one mission. Was really, you know, the one with the 4 bosses, the 4 Guardian mission. I think it's 6-3. But yeah, try to take out these pillars when you can. See, I only have a minute left and I got to kill about 20 guys, so it's getting a little tight. This mission can definitely take a few attempts. So now some of the harder enemies are coming out. So I think I was saving my dragon for this wave of enemies, because these guys are a pain in the ass, these clone type of enemies. These are like final boss, basically like the final boss in some ways, but they're like regular enemies. They have like the same attacks as the final boss. The guy named Douglas is pretty much a clone of the final boss, so you know, these guys are annoying. I mean, luckily they're not as dangerous as the final boss, but they got similar shit. So I got a wall combo here at the end to take out this last powerful enemy, which does massive damage, but you may have to try that a few times. So this is a 5-star difficulty according to the game. I don't remember this one being that hard, but they all pretty much get a higher ranking by the game's standard by the time you get to the end. I think this is more of a fun mission. I don't remember this one being difficult. You know, avoid the fucking giant balls, I guess. Oh yeah, I guess you're protected. You only have to protect one little pillar on the far right. So if you can knock everyone over to the left side, you can at least keep enemies off of that. You know, with all your knockback attacks. And I don't see a timer, so at least it doesn't end until you destroy all the enemies. You know, there's a set amount of spawns, so. Try to stay on the right and just, you know, protect that, you know, keep the enemies back. The wrecking balls kind of help you because they'll knock the enemies back too, so it's not that bad. You can use the fire extinguisher if you want to, like, freeze the enemies. It sprays them and damages them. So they give you a lot of those if you want to use some of the items. I didn't really fuck around with it too much for this mission. I mean, you have a lot of good knockback attacks and shit, so I was mostly using that, but the other guys over on the left side, all these other assholes, so I was just leaving them alone since they're not really fucking with the pillar. You mainly want to focus on protecting that one little pillar in the right. I think kicking the bags it doesn't do much damage, but it stuns the enemies. The Molotovs are really good, so you might want to use those. Decided to use the screen clearing attack here because there's a lot of these Burmovs. Burmovs I find a lot easier than the Abobos because they're usually open for attack when you hit them, unlike the Abobos. The Abobos tend to power through a lot of your attacks. You know, they don't always react. There's a weird super armor in this game where enemies sometimes don't react to your hits if you hit them during a certain time, and it's hard for me to predict at times. So it made that 4 boss fight really difficult because, you know, I'm never really sure when the enemies are going to be open for attack. I mean, I know a few incidences, but it's hard to find consistent openings, so it's a lot of risks. So this is another one I think it's better to focus on the boss and kind of ignore the objects. But we'll see. I don't really remember exactly. I think the objects are kind of an afterthought for some of these missions. Like I said, the only hard one involving breaking all the objects was that one that I mentioned earlier in that little trailer park area. But aside from that, I thought these missions were usually pretty easy with the breaking objects. What's tough about this mission probably is that it is a pretty short timer. So, taking out the boss in that short amount of time can be difficult. Because this guy's really evasive, so he's a bit of a pain in the ass. But if you get that dragon meter, use it to get some damage on the boss and clear some shit out. Because when you use that screen clearing attack, it clears out all the items that are on screen too, so it'll break a bunch of boxes if they're on screen. So this is down to the last seconds, and I still need 500 points, so I'm not sure how I got it here. Maybe there were some gold boxes. This is going to be really close. Yeah, I think because there were some gold boxes next to each other. I almost didn't get it on that attempt. But they do pile up a bunch of easy stuff to break for high points at the end. So, like I said, if you focus on the boss, you shouldn't have any problem breaking the boxes. You can wait till the end. So for this set of missions, I don't actually remember what this was. I don't think this is one of the harder sets of missions, but we'll see in a minute what this is. I don't remember this being a difficult mission. I think this one's pretty easy. It's only 25 enemies, and you have the walls that you can spam. So you can do those wall jump attacks probably to clear out the enemies pretty decently. This is a pretty common arena that gets reused a lot, so I don't think there's any tough missions within this little area here. Like I said, it's really unbalanced. This is definitely a later mission, but there's still, later missions that are really easy, so it's kind of all over the place with difficulty. I would probably prioritize the grenade throwing enemies in those waves, because those guys can be a little bit irritating with all the fucking grenades. So now we have grenades raining down during this phase, it seems, so that can be annoying. But if you just punch these guys, do some spin attacks and shit like that, you may even get some counters, so this is really not too difficult. But these guys are evasive. They can be annoying. But like I said, nothing that's going to be too difficult. There's about 9 enemies left, and there's still, quite a bit of time left, so this doesn't look too hard. So we got some of these tougher clone enemies in here, which could be a little annoying, but you can get some easy counters in with these charging enemies once you know their timing. You kind of just stand there and wait for them to charge, and they always charge on the same timing, so if you don't get interrupted, it can make it hard when enemies start hitting you and shit, but I still got my dragon move that I can use too, which I'm probably going to use here, so see, now the mission is done, so really that's an easy one. So for this one, I'm using Marianne. This might be a combo mission. Let me see what this is. Yeah, 45. It's a 45 combo, so you got to get a 45 hit combo. Even though it says chain 45 combos, you don't actually have to do 45 fucking different combos, but it's just a 45 hit combo. And these are generally really easy. There's one tricky one near the end of the game that's a little bit of a pain in the ass, but they're easy compared to the other missions, and Really, none of them are that difficult, but some of them can be a little annoying, can take a little while, but none of them are hard. One of them is annoying because you're getting machine gunned constantly while trying to get a combo, so that one's a little irritating. But if you just fuck around, smack the enemies around and mix in the her version of the cyclone kick, which is basically like a knee in the air and then a drop kick. If you just keep spamming that, it racks up a lot of combos. So that's why I like using her for the combo missions. So, very easy. So like I said, there is some really easy missions later in the game. I don't remember any hard boss fights with this character, with this boss. I have to see exactly what's on this mission. Obviously, you want to keep the enemies off the pillar, which, the ground pound attacks work well. Since there's no timer here, you can kind of spam it to keep guys away a little bit. Again, you do want to get used to that prompt, that mid-air prompt to swing on those things. It is really finicky. It's one of the shittier, one of the worst controlling aspects of the game, so... If you're not used to it right away, it would probably take some practice to get used to doing it. But it's not really difficult to do. It's just like really finicky. So the whip can be kind of good to keep these guys all grouped on the other side of the screen. So you may want to utilize that. It's good damage too. So. I already have one full dragon meter I can use, so I'm probably going to use that at some point. Yeah, I saw all the enemies coming out of the train. It's probably why I decided to use it there, and it finished off the boss. So this really isn't too bad. And now I just have to mop up some of the enemies. This may even be the final wave of enemies. I guess there's another boss in here. I guess this is the main boss, the Marcus. But there was two bosses in here, actually. But Marcus is a pretty easy boss, especially when there's a wooden board on the map, which is usually what I use to take him out. So I'm probably going to use that again here. I'm clearing out some of the enemies, and I probably would ignore the enemies if it wasn't for trying to protect this pillar. So now I'm starting to use the wooden stick on the boss. So. Those charge... I think they're, like, you hold the button to do a charge swing, I think. Those are the most powerful swings, I think, with that. And that really damages the boss a lot, so that helped a lot. But they give you some nice weapons and shit, and you got, that little ceiling thing you can swing on, so it's not too bad. So next up is the Raymond tier. I think this one, yeah, the boss fight here can be really, really hard because Raymond is always a tough fight. So you would have to be familiar with beating him at least on normal, or it's going to be tough. But I don't think it's much different than the fight is on normal mode. I believe the challenge mode is possibly set to like normal combat difficulty. I think it is. I'm not really sure, though, but the thing is that the scenarios are a lot harder, so the enemy layouts and arrangements and, objectives and things like that you don't have in the campaign, so. But I assume it's probably set to, like, normal, but they just put a lot more shit that you have to deal with, especially solo later on, like I said. Like, now, you can tell this is designed to be a co-op mission with the two pillars you have to protect. And, you can only be in one place at one time, so you got to kind of plan it out. There's definitely some planning as far as like what enemies you want to take out and what to manage. You want to check the health bars of the pillars because you don't want to let the enemies get too much damage in on one side. So you may want to balance that out a little bit. I don't know if this one took me a while, but some of these missions are more like routing where you just want to figure out, what enemies to take out first and what to deal with, what enemies to knock back. And, of course, improvising as well. But I don't remember this one being one of the hardest protection missions or anything. So you can easily counter those Abobos whenever they pick up that rock and turn blue, obviously, so that's an easy opportunity. They give you a lot of weapons in here, so, I mean, that does help. It's getting aggressive here with all these clones, though, so if I can get that dragon meter up soon, I'm probably going to want to use that as soon as possible. So I got these jumping hammer attacks. The jumping charged hammer attack is great for damage and clearing shit out. And it knocks everybody down, too, so it's a good way to get the enemies off the pillars. So now I have a full dragon meter. Probably going to use it here. And this should finish off a lot of the enemies. Yeah, now I can stomp these armors and, you know, take these guys out. I don't know if I'm going to get to the other one. You see how I wait a moment before stomping it? Like I mentioned, you don't want to just run and hit RT, even though you should be able to do that. But it's finicky, so you got to like run there, just stop for about half a second, wait for the prompt to appear, and then hit the right trigger. That's the easiest way to do it, but you do have to make sure you're standing in the right position, obviously. So it's still anal, but that's the way I do it pretty consistently. But yeah, it's getting a little aggressive here. You got a lot of hard enemies out now, and they're going crazy on the pillar. So this is definitely not an easy protection mission for what I'm seeing here. I don't remember it taking me too long, but doesn't mean it was as easy. You know, I had a lot of practice with the game too at this point. I mean, these are clearly designed for co-op at this point. But yeah, that's not too bad though. I mean, I got the second dragon attack in, which finished everything off, so it wasn't too bad. But definitely a little tricky. So this is another destruction mission, and you know, none of these are really that difficult except for the one that gave me a lot of trouble, but it was because I didn't know what I had to fucking break. There was these little items that I neglected to break. I didn't really think they were that important. Or I may have not noticed that they were even breakable. These little boxes in the background, but so that one was a pain in the ass, but it really wasn't that hard when you know what to do. There were no videos, like I said, so I don't think I was able to find a video for that one either, but you know, just trial and error. So now we have a machine gun Willie joining in to make things a little bit more difficult, but this is easy. Just avoid the enemies and prioritize the silver crates, and if you see a gold crate, go to that first. You want to prioritize them in order of the ones with the most points. So the most points are the gold crate. Second to that is the regular silver metal crate, and you know, lastly is the wooden box, which is worth very little. So use that background punch with one of the double dragons, because that kills the boxes in one hit. So that's the easiest way to do these, and you can group them together and hit multiple at once. So it's really not bad. You may want to, you know, stun the enemies or counter them to like get them off your ass briefly. But you can use, you know, if you get the dragon meter up, you can also use that to clear out all the boxes that are on screen. So sometimes that's good, but I wouldn't prioritize that. I wouldn't waste too much time comboing the enemies, because you want to spend more time breaking shit, because you do have to get a decent amount of points here. So this one's a little tricky. I think this one took me some attempts. But you get a nice amount of gold boxes, so you do want to prioritize those. Because like I said, the enemies break the boxes. That's what makes these a little annoying. It's because the enemies will break the boxes and then you don't get credit for them. So that's why you want to run over to the boxes that are worth the most points immediately and just take them out. But that's about it. The timer, you know, the timer was pretty tight here, but it was really not a hard mission. I think the enemies keep respawning even if you take them out, so, you know, there's not really any sense in trying to eliminate them. So now this fight could have taken me a while. I mean, because it took me a while even on the normal campaign, and it took me even longer in the hard mode. But I was already familiar with the fight, so I'd be using the strategies that I was using in the campaign pretty much at this point. This isn't the harder version of Raymond from what I can gather. I don't remember it being harder. It's pretty much equal to the one in the campaign, maybe on normal mode. So if you fought this guy before in the campaign, I think you're pretty much dealing with the same shit here. It's the one at the very end of this challenge mission that's like a super hard version. So, that's a little different. So the idea with this guy, if you haven't fought him before, the idea with the guy is to you can block most of his moves, and then you can counter when there's, after he finishes one of his moves. So that's mostly what I'm doing. And when the clones come out, I'm using wall jump, ground slams, and the cyclone kick to try to clear out the clones. So that's the general idea with this guy. I'm also trying to wall combo him. So I'm trying to get him against the wall, but not bouncing. When his body is bouncing, you won't get the wall combo. But see, I'm trying to get him like that to get the wall combos in. So, that's the main thing. He does regenerate all his health about halfway through the fight, which is super fucking annoying. Now, you can do a regular jump to dodge his move that takes away like half of your health. When the ground starts to turn red, you can see it by the ground starts filling up with the color red. And when it becomes all solid for a split second, that's when he's going to do his attack that takes like half of your health. So if you look at that ground, the red ground, you can kind of tell when it's going to fill up all the way. And that'll give you your timing you need to jump. So when that's full, you need to jump at the right moment. You can do just a straight jump, or you can get up on a wall, obviously, and use the invincibility frames from the wall jump attack. But either way, you have to be in the air for that split second or so when he actually initiates the attack. So that's how you dodge that. See, the ground turns red and then it fills up. It's a very fast attack, but you'll get used to dodging it after a while. Now, this is another thing you can do that's very effective on this boss, is grab him and then bring him to the back wall and then hit B. So you drag him to the back wall, but you don't have a lot of time to do it. And then you hit B, and you'll do an attack that does equal damage to your wall combo attack, pretty much. So that's another thing that's really effective on the boss, and it's very good on other enemies and things like that as well. I didn't use it for most of the game because I learned about it very late. The game doesn't really tell you some of those hidden moves. See how I just jumped straight up and dodged it? You got to jump straight up at the right time. If you don't, then you'll be familiar with what he does if you don't, because he'll take like half of your health. It's a very irritating move, and he will spam it like crazy, like back to back, and go wild with it on the final version of him, and it's one of the things that makes him even harder. But the thing that makes his final version really hard in the challenge mode is he spams the clones like a motherfucker, and he's much more evasive and harder to counter. He has similar moves, but everything is kind of just bulked up to be more fucking annoying. But yeah, this is pretty much the Raymond fight that you would encounter in the campaign, so there's not any extra information aside from the general strats I used. It is a hard fight even on normal mode in the campaign. And on hard mode, I think it took me like 4 hours or some shit, so it was very hard, but... So now we're getting to the this is the final tier of missions, and there is the 4 Guardian mission, which is extremely difficult. It took me over 16 hours. And then there's the 4 Machine Gun Willie fight in the next boss tier, which took me 4 hours. So those are extremely difficult. Then you got the final boss, which is extremely difficult. So this whole area, it really picks up. And even the regular little small missions are a lot harder on average. So. But they don't get insanely difficult. The hardest parts are the parts that I mentioned. The smaller missions, some of them can be tough, but there's nothing that's like insane. They might be a little bit harder. Some of them are even not. Some of them are even kind of easy for this late in the game. So that's not going to be the main difficulty. So this is another object breaking mission. So you don't have to fuck with the enemies that much if you don't want to. You can really just target the boxes and shit. I think I was clearing out some enemies, because if I remember right, this area gets really crowded if you don't clear out the enemies, and they really start interrupting, your ability to break all the boxes, because they become really fucking aggressive. So I think I was thinning it out a little bit. But yeah, the Bobos are generally easy to get that counter damage. You can also knock them off the back of the arena, I think. If not, you can knock them into the electric area on the arena, which will cause them to be stunned most of the time, since they're standing on the electricity. You can see how fucking crowded it gets at this point, solo. There's a lot of fucking enemies. So that's why I was clearing some shit out earlier. Because it will get really fucking crowded. Like it is now. It's already a mess in this area. And of course, whenever the helicopter blows up everything, you don't get credit for that. So you have to be the one to destroy the boxes. So it can be annoying when the enemies start stealing all your fucking, boxes that you're trying to get. I think it's also easy just to die here because all the enemies, you take a lot of damage easily. So that one is kind of tricky. I don't think it took me super long, but it's one of the trickier. It might be one of the hardest of the box breaking challenges, or one of the harder ones. I don't remember this one being too tough. I think there might be a wall you can use here for wall jump attacks, if I remember right. You have a whip, which is really good, so you want to use that. Maybe counter these charging guys. So if you time those cyclone spins at the right time, you can easily counter those charging guys. And now I already have a full dragon meter, so I'm using it here. I don't know if I had a strategic time to use the screen clearing dragon move, but this one's pretty tight just because there's a lot of enemies and the timer is not too long. You don't have too much time to kill them all. But you got some weapons and shit like that, so I have a full dragon meter again, which I'm probably saving for when there's more enemies, or maybe not. The Bobo came down, so it might be a good time to use it. The stick is really good, and it kills a lot of the enemies fast, especially the weaker enemies. So you can kind of mow through them with these nightsticks. So this one's not too bad. There's like 3 enemies left. I don't know if there was any walls that I utilized. It doesn't look like it. There may be a wall in the bottom left corner that you can wall jump attack off of, but I don't know if that was going to be too effective here, because if the enemies aren't in that area, it's kind of a waste of time. But yeah, nothing too difficult. I think the previous mission was quite a bit harder than this one. Okay, this one. I don't really remember this one that much. I think this one might be a little tough, but nothing crazy. I did a little wall grab attack on the pillar. You can also use the pillar as you would use the back wall to do a wall grab attack, where you drag the enemy to the pillar and then press B. So you can use it for that. You can also use it for a wall combo attacks, where you get that wall combo animation. But see, it's an easy way to slam them against the pillar and do massive damage. So keep in mind you can utilize it that way to take those guys out fast. These guys are easier to take out just by countering them both like this. This does a lot of damage. And now I'm using this pillar as a wall to drag the guys to and do the wall combo move a lot, because they're all they're so close to the pillar that you can get in some easy kills that way. Since they're standing right there, you just grab them, bring them up, and then do this, and you're getting a lot. You're pretty much wiping out the enemy you do it on. So it's an easy way to take these guys out. And I see I'm doing it a lot, so I guess it was pretty effective here. You can do it a lot here. I didn't even remember that I used it this much. This is probably the part of the game where I used it the most, because I don't remember ever using it that frequently. But it seems to work pretty well here. So there was some ground attack occurring again, where the whole ground turns red. You probably got to jump when it fills up like usual. I don't know who was doing that attack. The Abobo, I mean, if he goes wild, he can probably damage the shit out of the pillar, so you want to get on him as soon as you can, but I think now it's just me and the boss, so it's not too bad. I got a dragon move as well, so. But yeah, this one looks pretty tough. I mean, this might be one of the more challenging protection missions. It looks pretty tough. Yeah, there's something that like attacks the whole ground, just gets earthquake or some kind of shit. Some AoE type of thing, but if you jump at the right time, you can avoid it. A lot of enemies coming out again, so this is pretty aggressive mission. So I got a wall move on this guy. I think this one was pretty hard. I don't think it took me super long, but I mean it could have taken a while if things didn't go well. I am using that wall move a lot. But this is getting pretty damn close. And the Bobo's going a little crazy, charging into the pillar, which is dangerous. So I was able to intercept that. And now I have a dragon move now, so. The Burmov is almost done, so I may be able to focus on. I got another counter, and that may have destroyed the pillar if I didn't intercept that again. So it is getting dangerous. At least this charge move is pretty easy to counter once you got the timing down. So just make sure you're standing between him and the pillar when he charges that move, because otherwise he can destroy the pillar pretty easily, I'm guessing. The pillar is down to like the last sliver now, so and he was down to the end too, so it worked out, but that got real close, so almost had to redo that shit. Okay, so now we're going to be approaching the hardest mission in the game, for me anyway. So, for this, you're going to see a straight run of these 3 missions without dying. And the reason I did that, I wanted to bring 2 full dragon meters to the boss and a weapon from a previous mission. So I'm going to explain that now. So for this, you're going to use the background wheel to hit the guys into the background for an instant kill when they land on the wheel and get stuck. And you're going to use these hammers kind of strategically by jumping and slamming, using your charge slam, like that. That's going to clear most of them out. And you want to keep chaining that for each wave. So, get another hammer when you can. Knock the guys into the background, obviously. You can choose to knock the harder enemies into that background wheel for an instant kill, if you want to try to do that. And then you want to jump and do that slam move. Just as they're coming down, you'll hit all the enemies as they come down, pretty much, if you time it right. So, and you wipe out most of them this way, and then you got to clean up a little bit. But you want to save the hammer for when the enemies are first jumping down, basically, is what I try to do. Because this is another mission that, while not that hard, you do have to protect 2 different targets. So they do give you the means to do it decently here with the hammers, though. So I did try bringing the sledgehammer all the way to the boss mission with the 4 guardians. It would not let me bring it. I can bring it to the next mission, but then it disappears. So I don't know if there's any way to bring the hammer to the boss mission. I really wanted the fucking hammer for the bosses. That would have done massive damage on all of them, but I could not bring it. So if you figure out how to do that, let me know. Not that I'm going to revisit this anytime soon, but it would be interesting to see. So, at this point, I'm just finishing up. That was pretty much the basic strat. Now, I'm doing these missions back-to-back without dying because, like I said, I already got 1.5 dragon meters, and I want 2 full dragon meters for the boss fight to start the fight off. And I got to keep my health up, obviously. I don't want to, because your health carries over between missions. You may get a little bit back between missions, I think you do, but it's not a lot. So I'm trying to keep my health topped off, and I'm trying to bring 2 dragon meters to the 3rd mission, which is the boss mission. So I brought the hammer. Notice I picked up the hammer right before the mission ended. So you can do that, but I don't think you can bring the hammer into the boss mission. But I just drop it on the ground so I can use it later. I don't think I really need it here anyway. So to start off, just do some ground pound attacks off the right wall until you clear all these guys, and then the Molotov guys are going to show up at the top. You got to do a very specific jump kick, but you can take them out. It's pretty anal. You see I keep missing it. You got to like jump kick while facing the background somehow. It's a little awkward. You may have to fuck around to get it right. Sometimes I can do it right away. Other times it takes a few tries. But you see I got both of them out of there. You want to do that. You don't want them on the field because the Molotovs that they throw on the ground cover like the whole arena with flames, and it does massive damage, and then you're not going to be able to bring full health to the next area. So make sure you take care of them immediately. The grenade guy, I like to drag him to the wall and do a throw on him to take the first one out immediately, as you saw. Now I'm focusing on the left wall ground attacks to take these guys out. I'm going to take this guy off the barrel by doing another ground pound. That's going to knock him off the barrel as well because he's going to keep throwing bombs. And then you can jump kick him off of there if you want. Notice I'm not using my dragon meter attacks. I'm saving them for the final mission in this set, the boss mission. So again with the ground pound. Now I grabbed the spiked bat only because I want to bring it into the next mission. So I'm already preparing for that. Because I'm only using ground pound attacks here. So I don't need to actually, waste the uses of my weapon by smacking anyone with it. So I'm just going to pick that up to make sure I don't forget to bring it with me. You can still do jump kicks while holding the weapon. It doesn't affect that. So you won't waste your weapon uses with that. So now we're ground pound attacking. There's going to be an Abobo that comes out. Just ignore him and focus on the small enemies. You only need to take out 50 enemies, and it doesn't matter which ones you take out. So focus on taking out the small enemies. They die fast from the ground pound attacks. So just ignore the Abobo. You don't even need to combo him unless you want the dragon meter for it or something, but you don't need to do that. I'm just focusing on doing these attacks, switching sides as needed, so that the Abobo can't fuck with me too much, because he'll throw rocks and shit, and he can hit me, which is really bad sometimes. I've gotten there with less health than I wanted, because if you don't have absolutely full health, it kind of sucks. See, he already hit me with some bullshit. And if you don't have full health, it sucks even more because it's such a hard fucking mission. So that one went pretty smooth, and I got the bat. So now I'm in this hardest mission that took me 16 hours and 20 minutes, this one boss fight. And I have the bat, and I have 2 full dragon meters, basically. So I'll try to explain how I did this. It's extremely difficult. But there was a method, but it was just a lot of luck, too. So you can counter that roper immediately by standing in that line that he dashes in and doing the spin attack. I always start off with that. It's pretty much a guaranteed counter. Of course, it's already getting fucking insane here. But you want to use your spin attack. See, I got another counter on him. I'm saving my dragon attacks at this point. But now that Linda is down, I'm probably going to use my first one, because she's the hardest to damage. So I'm using it when she's out because I want to do massive damage to Linda. Of course, it does damage the other enemies too. I get another counter. Here's the third counter so far. And now she's on that back pillar where she's safe. Now I'm using it again because I want to use my dragon meter to thin these guys out, and it takes out one of the ropers. And now I'm going to have to knock guys into that pillar in the back to get Linda down, so I'm working on that now. I also try to move the bosses into the back area where the electricity is by using the background attack. And that'll get them in the electric field where they get stunned more often. So that's an important tactic as well. But a lot of shit has to cooperate for this to work. It's a lot harder than it looks. There's a lot going on. It's very hard to cover everything I'm doing here. But when I'm attacking the Abobos, I don't know when they're vulnerable. So I'll do a few attacks to test if they're open, if they flinch. And if they don't take stun, if they're not stunned by my hits, then I'll do a cyclone spin kick to kind of offset it and avoid taking damage. Avoid taking some damage anyway and get some extra damage on them. But there's a lot going on here. I use the next dragon attack. Now I have 2 bosses left. And I'm just running around because the Abobo is so hard to know when he's going to be open. So I'm trying to get him to kick or do something where he's usually open. But see, he wasn't open. He had his super armor again, which means he doesn't take any damage. Well, he takes damage, but he doesn't move when you hit him. So you can't get him to react, which is a nightmare because that's where he'll fuck you up. He'll tank your hits basically and just do this shit, like that. So I'm trying to get him to open up, but I still didn't know how to predict when he would be open. I got him there. I tested and it worked. I did my punch and he flinched. He did his stun. But you can also use the charge punches to knock enemies into that pillar, which is a great way to take out that pillar Linda is on. Now I got an Abobo counter by luck here while I was attacking him. Total luck. But you see, I was countering pretty much everything which really, it was luck too. You know, I usually don't even counter the Linda like that either. I got a counter on her. So everything just went like really well on top of just playing the shit out of this and having a routine. So I'm trying to knock this enemy back where the Abobo is. See how I'm grouping them in the back area. And when they're standing on that electricity in the back, they get stunned more often. But yeah, all I can say is this is a brutal mission, but the idea is I take the Roper out first. And after that, I'm kind of just looking for opportunities. Like I'll probably try to take out the guy after the Roper is the... I forgot what his name is. There's a guy that drops bombs a lot. I try to take that guy out second. But I don't really have a specific order because it depends. You know, after the Roper, it kind of depends on what the other enemies do. So it really is a nightmare mission, but it is doable solo, as you see. But between the timer and everything going on, it's a brutal fucking mission. It's one of the hardest checkpoints that I completed in any game. So that was like the highlight of this whole challenge mode. So beyond that, there's probably not a lot that I can really say. I mean, you want to use the weapons. You want to bring the extra weapon. You want to bring the 2 dragon meters, too, with you, if you can, because that's going to help a lot. You don't need to do that, but it's going to help a lot. But, I mean, a lot of times I did those previous 2 missions, and I still completely died. So it's definitely not a guarantee at all. But it helps. But it's only useful to do that once you actually know that mission well. So practice it for a while. Don't just assume that 2 dragon meters is going to get you through that fight, because it won't. So the previous mission, I used Marianne because she's the combo person to use, but it's annoying because the machine gun's everywhere and you constantly get interrupted, but it's easy. So now for this, you want to use Marianne. I mean, you don't have to use Marianne, but you want to take out these Molotov guys as they appear. I'm trying to take them out as they walk across when I can. And, you know, take out the enemies, obviously. Stay in this bottom area because it's safer from all the flame. And take out enemies when you have the opportunities. Try to always wipe out the Molotov guys as they walk by if you can. See, I'm trying to wipe them all out to get my kill count up. Because you got to take out 30 enemies. And the timer is kind of tight. And I want to bring my dragon meter from the previous fight if I can. But it's not super effective to redo these 2 missions before Willy because you don't end up with a ton of dragon meter, really. You might have 1 full meter. I mean, it does help. But I don't think I ended up utilizing that this time. You can do that, though. I was doing it for a while, but it didn't end up being enough for me to win anyway, so I just went with an old strat. But yeah, that's it. Kind of stay in that bottom area, and the flames will take out a lot of the enemies for you, so that's kind of the strat there. Now, this fight took 4 hours. This is really, really fucking hard. I don't think I beat it with her, so this is probably going to be a death. But you'll see this fight is ridiculous, so... Basically, you want to use the bat to knock him over to the left side is what I like to do, where these barrels are. But the barrels may be a different arrangement each time. That I don't remember. I think they may change. But the idea is I'm trying to wall combo Willy. I'm trying to get him to the wall, and I'm trying to mostly ignore the clones so that I can wall combo Willy. So the main Willy. The main one is the red one. That's the one that you have to kill. The other ones are a waste of time to actually try to kill because new ones spawn in like immediately. When you kill those big Willies, the new one will spawn in. And it can be up to 3 clones plus Willies, so there can be 4 Willies on screen at once. Going fucking wild with machine guns. It makes this a pretty brutal mission. It's extremely difficult. You know, because remember, I'm doing it solo still at this point, so it's very fucking hard. But see, I'm going for these wall combos is what I'm trying to do. This may have been a decent attempt. I'm getting some pretty decent wall combos. I don't know if this was the one where I succeeded. I don't remember succeeding after doing all the missions, you know, and bringing the dragon meter. I don't remember that actually being the one where I actually did it, but maybe I did. We're going to see. I mean, this looks like this might be the one where I did it. It's really close here, though. But the idea is I'm trying to keep about a mid-range from the wall, and I'm trying to keep getting him into that wall combo by staying about mid-range. But I'm getting shot, too, obviously. And I don't really know how to avoid that too easily. But I'm trying to keep about mid-range, and I'm just trying to get those wall combos. This may have been the one where I got it, so maybe I edited it correctly. Okay, I guess I did. So that dragon meter definitely probably would have helped me a little bit, bringing the dragon meter from the previous 2 missions. And the previous 2 missions are easy to redo again and again once you've done them a few times. So they're not bad. But the Willy fight is a bitch. Yeah, that fight is a bitch. It's not nearly as bad as the 4 Guardians, but it's a bitch. But the idea is to keep about mid-range from that wall so I can keep wall comboing them. I'm just hoping that the other enemies aren't machine gunning me constantly while I'm trying to do it. You know? I mean, they're going to be doing that, but sometimes the barrels provide shelter. If you can do it behind some barrels, you won't take all the machine gun fire from the clones. So there's definitely luck for me involved with that. So now this is not going to be like, these missions are not going to be anything insane, but this one is a little challenging. It can be hard if you want to do all these missions in a row to bring Dragon Meter to the Raymond fight. It's the ultimate version of Raymond, pretty much. It's a very hard version. So, you know, it could be hard to do all these missions back to back without losing. You can if you practice, obviously, but I didn't bother doing that. But what I did end up doing, I kind of gave in and did the last mission in co-op, which was kind of, you know, it was kind of cheap because I wanted to beat them all solo, but I was like, fuck it. I was kind of burnt out on this mission mode after, you know, close to 34 hours on it. Especially after the mission that took over 16 hours, the, you know, with the 4 bosses. That may still be the hardest mission in the game, but I didn't spend enough time on the Raymond fight to really give a final assessment of what the hardest mission was. That, you know, that last one is very hard as well. But I think managing the 4 bosses while the minions is definitely up there. You know, it's pretty fucking brutal. Because they removed the helicopter, which made the fight a lot more manageable in the campaign. So Linda is using those pillars, which you have to destroy about 4 of them, which waste a lot of time. I didn't spend enough time on here to have a lot of, you know, crazy strats or anything for this one, but it is a little tricky. Because you get sucked to either side by some vacuum or something, so it's a little annoying. But by this point, this is not going to be anything that's going to stand out. I think this mission is very easy. There's a lot of gold boxes to destroy. So I probably won't have anything to say about this. You want to, you know, get to the side where the gold boxes are and try to do your ground pounds there. So you want to be pretty decent at doing the swinging on these things, which, like I said, kind of controls shitty. So you do want to be, you know, fairly proficient at doing that if you're doing it solo. But aside from that, not much else to say. I think I do switch sides at some point because the gold boxes tend to be more on one side than the other. So you may see me prioritize one side later. But that was pretty clean. I mean, it really wasn't bad. I don't think it'll take too long if you do that. Probably maybe a few tries, but not too bad. This is a very easy mission. You're just fighting 4 of these clone type of regular enemies, but just in a short period of time, like 2 minutes. But it's really easy at this point. I mean, you don't even have to worry about really countering them. Just do your ground pound attacks, finish off enemies with all the moves that you know, the wall combos and the. You may want to grab them and if you have an opening, grab them and bring them to the back wall for massive damage. But I mean, I mostly just did the ground pound. Now I did redo these missions in 2 players because I started co-op and I redid the whole mission set. But I'm not showing that here because I wanted to show all the missions solo for this tutorial. So I'm just showing what I did solo, and then obviously for the last mission I gotta show it in co-op because that's the only way I finish this mode. So. You know, unfortunately, I did cave in. So, like I said, that's not going to be helpful if you're trying to beat all the missions solo. But, I mean, it'll at least get you to the final boss if you... I mean, at least you'll have some footage to guide you a little bit. Show you, like, some outcomes and some different strats. Like I said, I didn't have any videos for this mode. So, I don't think I found a single video that helped me or anything. So, I mean, that should cut back some time. But this is nothing special. But the next fight is extremely difficult, and that's where you're going to see me editing in where I start this mission in co-op. Now, my friend that I was playing with, he didn't have any experience with the game at all, so he was just learning to play the game from scratch. So I had to instruct him, and he started to learn pretty fast. Because he's a very skilled player, but he's just not familiar with this particular game. So he's the one in the pink costume, the fruity sweater, and I'm the black ninja. I used the ninja for this mission even in solo, and that was my best attempt in solo, which I'm going to show my solo attempt, my best solo attempt. I'm going to show that after this. But right now, we're doing it in co-op. Now, when we played this in co-op, it still took us almost 3 hours to beat this. So very hard even co-op, you know. But the idea, like I said, is you're going to block and wait for those openings. So we're both trying to do that now. Of course, I told him how the boss fight works, and, you know, he was able to learn pretty quick. But we're waiting for those openings to get those hits in, and ideally get the wall combos in, or drag him to the back wall and use the wall bash, as I've been mentioning. But that's pretty much the goal. And when the clones are on the field, we're trying to take the clones out as soon as possible. So those are some of the main strats. He has these fucking super moves now that cover the whole ceiling now. So if you're trying to wall jump, you get smashed in the air. And he's super evasive now, and his moves are just a lot more dangerous than they were in his initial fight. So they made like a super version of him is basically what this is. And of course he regenerates all his health, and you have a tight timer to do it all in. So doing this solo is extremely, extremely difficult. Even my best attempt, it wasn't great. But you could see I was getting something down. But it wasn't even close, you know. I was a little bit more than halfway, but I still had to contend with the timer. So you do have to jump at the right time, and you see he's spamming that move like crazy now with the ground attack. That takes half of your health. So you got to wait for the ground to fill up, like I said, with red, and then you jump. Just do a little hop. That's how you dodge it. But I'm trying to get those wall combos and, you know, counter and do all that shit. And this went pretty well. I think I did end up dying, but in co-op you can get revived, so my friend was able to revive me. And then we were able to finish it off. But of course, this is not going to help you much if you're trying to beat this mission solo. You're going to have to figure that out. So it's about as far as I can take you currently. But yeah, pretty much all his moves can be blocked, and then after he's finished, you can get an attack, and that's how it mainly works. But sometimes he's not vulnerable when you would expect, and then you take a ton of damage. So it's a lot harder than it looks. But there are some openings you can try to go for. So now my friend's going to have to revive me, and then we were able to finish it off. Even if you get hit while reviving, it saves some of your revived progress for a little while, but it does drain, so you got to get back to it pretty quickly. But you can kind of just keep running back and trying to revive, which makes co-op much, much easier than solo. So, and there doesn't seem to be a limit to how many times you can revive each other, but it's still easy to lose. As I said, we still took almost 3 hours to beat this in co-op. And I probably spent an hour or two solo on this, if not more, trying to do it solo, but I was just burnt out. I didn't want to spend another 16 hours to do this. I was spending more time than I wanted to at this point on this challenge mode, but very cool mode. Despite some pretty bullshitty missions, but I guess that's the idea, you know, some ridiculous situations. And it wasn't really designed to be done solo near the end, so it was interesting to try to, you know, puzzle it out and figure it out. But now we're starting to finish him off, and then I'm going to show my best failed attempt, just so you can see my best progress solo in the few hours that I spent. So I will show that at the end. But even on co-op, you got to be really good at, like, you know, blocking and getting in on those openings and getting those wall combos in, because the timer is still very tight even on co-op. And it's really fucking tight when you're doing this solo, because I don't think the difficulty scales at all for co-op. So, you know, whatever you see in the game in co-op, it's the same on solo as far as I know. Same amount of enemies, same everything. So, I don't think the timer is different. I don't think anything's different on co-op, except the fact that you have somebody else helping you out. So that's it. We managed to beat it. I was happy in the end. I mean, I was a little dissatisfied because I wanted to do them all on solo, which was just a personal thing. There are no trophies or achievements for it, and I don't give a shit about that. I just like doing personal challenges for my kill list and stuff like that, and beating hard games, beating games in general. But you know, I did want to complete them all solo, but I was like, fuck it. I mean, it is still beating the mode. The mode does allow co-op. And I mean, I did everything except the last mission, so still reasonable. You know, not exactly what I wanted, but good enough for me now, so this was you could see this was when I knew the game better. I was pretty fast and proficient. I was playing a lot better than I was on two players, as you can see. I'm much more aggressive and faster. because it's a very strict timer. So I was getting pretty quick with doing all my moves and stuff. Now, when I went back to the game on co-op, I had not played in some weeks, so I was actually a little rusty when we played as well. And it's different in co-op. The pacing is different. The screen moves a lot more. It's harder to see what's going on. It's a lot different, you know. But luckily, you can't hit each other. That would really suck. But I do like the ninja for this guy because the ninja's the fastest, and you know, you don't need background attacks, which the ninja doesn't seem to have any background attacks. He has a exploding shuriken that's kind of decent for this guy that I use when he's grounded for a little extra damage, as you would have saw. But so I would probably recommend the ninja if you're doing it solo. But aside from that, I mean, I was just trying to do, you know, the usual stuff that I would do on this fight, you know. Get the wall combos in, try to drag them to the back wall and do that wall bash throw move. And I'm just trying to be fast at countering them, but you see I get hit a lot. It's just very, very hard. I'm making good time at this point, I think. You know, I'm pretty consistent with my damage for a solo player, I would say, at this point. But there's things that he does that I don't know how to counter unless I get lucky, and I think I may get a few lucky counters in. But I got hit by his half damage move, which was really bad. So I have like very little health at this point. Now I got to clear out all these clones, which he spams like crazy, along with his, you know, his move that takes away half of your health. He spams that like fucking crazy in this version of this fight. He just keeps doing them back to back. It's a luck thing. If he does it like crazy or not, it's kind of a luck thing. But he will at times. And this fight has a tendency to glitch out completely with the screen glitches, and then you just lose. So, you know, very frustrating for a number of reasons. The clones are the biggest problem that I was having, and the strict timer. But the clones are really fucking hard to deal with solo, because he'll just keep bringing more clones out, and you barely get a chance to actually fight him. It's very hard to isolate him when the clones have all the same moves that he has, projectiles and every move you could imagine to try to hit you, and they're super fucking aggressive, homing into you, tracking you. And, you know, you're trying to isolate him, which you need some time to do all the hits that you need to do on him. I was making pretty good time there. I had over 2 minutes left, and he had a little under 2 health bars left. So that was my best attempt after a few hours. I did not want to keep doing it again to see, you know, how long it would take me to beat it solo, but you get the idea. I mean, I guess that might be the kind of thing you would try to do if you were fighting him. At least that was my best attempt at it solo. And then I took some weeks off because I was burnt out. And then I said, fuck it, let me come back and try it in co-op, see if we can just beat it in co-op and I can be done with this shit. Because I didn't want to wait too long to make the commentary as well. I wasn't playing this game consistent. I was working on, you know, I beat like 30 games a month on average, or 25, so I'm playing a lot of other shit, and I just didn't really want to like wait too long or too many weeks or months to do the tutorial because I was going to forget all the stuff. I mean, I already wasn't explaining the four Guardian mission in super detail. Maybe I could have detailed it more a few months ago or a month ago, you know. But yeah, that's about it. I don't have like anything I can say to make the 4 Guardian mission easy. Like the only thing I can say with that is try to bring the 2 dragon meters after you've practiced the mission. Try to go back, do the other missions in a row like I did, because they're easy to do once you learn them, because the spawns are always the same. So try to do that and just practice the shit out of it by retrying the mission again and again. Don't redo all the missions each time until you actually know how to do that mission, you know, until you're pretty good at it. You know, if you can't take out 2 of the bosses playing it without the 2 dragon meters, you can't at least take out 2 of the bosses yet, don't even bother playing the other missions right away, because you're probably not going to be able to do much of anything if you're not taking out both of the guys. You want to be able to at least take out 2 bosses. You want to be good enough to at least get that done. And then having 2 meters is going to help you a lot, and if you get lucky, then it may give you what you need to break through eventually. But it's going to take a lot of stubbornness, most likely. But there is an order of priority, like I said, but it kind of shifts. Like after I take out the roper, anything kind of goes. It's kind of like who's available for me to abuse. You know, I'm looking for I'm trying to like take openings on, you know, get the openings on all the different bosses at once. You know, I'm looking for them to be open in whenever I can. So it's a lot to manage. And they don't have like, the problem with that fight is they don't have super obvious openings most of the time where you can hit them. I mean, you can always hit them, but I'm talking about when you hit them and they flinch and get stunned. It's very hard to know when that's going to happen. There's not really obvious tells for that. You know, there's a few that are reliable sometimes, but they're never 100% reliable for me. And the problem is when they have that super armor, which means they absorb your hits, the problem with that is that then they can then damage you massively. So it's very risky and dangerous, and it's just very hard to get everything to cooperate. And, for the Willy fight that took me 4 hours with the 4 machine gun Willies, try to get mid-range from a wall and just keep wall comboing them, And if you want, try to bring that 1 dragon meter that you can charge up from the 2 previous missions. But aside from that, that's all I got. But let me know if you do play these challenge missions. It doesn't seem like anyone's playing them. But if you play them, give me some feedback. And thanks for watching.